Hello, and welcome to another London Ballet Circle in Conversation. In addition to our regular group of loyal attendees, we're joined tonight by a number of new viewers, mostly from the San Francisco area. We're absolutely delighted that you could join us and hope that you'll like what you see and hear and perhaps consider coming back for more LBC and conversations. This is our last talk of 2025, and what a great guest to finish the year with, Tamara Rojo. It's 3 years since Tamara last spoke to LBC, and it was a bittersweet evening for all of us. Following her brilliant career as a dancer, artistic director, and choreographer, she was leaving the UK. Oh, I don't know what that is. Anyway, she was leaving the UK, and we were terribly sorry to see her go. However, we were extremely excited that San Francisco Ballet was to be her new home. So we're really delighted that Tamara's taken the time for us today so we can catch up on what's been happening in San Francisco, and what a great opportunity for us to see her once again. And with the highly regarded writer and critic Graham Watts in the interviewer's seat, I know we're in for a tremendous conversation. So thank you both, Tamara and Graham, for taking the time for us today. If you have a question for Tamara, please type it in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And remember to give your first name. And with that, I will hand over to Graham Watts and tonight's guest, Tamara Rojo.
Thank you very much, Susan. And let me say I'm sorry we started a few minutes late due to technical problems, but you know, all the best things are worth waiting for. So welcome everyone, and especially welcome to Tamara, with many thanks for taking the time to join us and share some insights into her time in San Francisco. And I guess that we might also reminisce a little about her career in London, especially, of course, her decade as director of ENB. Just repeating what Susan said for the audience, if you want to ask a question, we should have 10 minutes or so at the end. Please use the chat bar at any time during the session. I'll come to them at the appropriate time, but for GDPR purposes, I'm only going to identify each questioner by their first name. So, Tamara, welcome. I think I speak for all of us here in London and elsewhere in the UK when I say that we miss you. So this is a special pleasure and a privilege, both for me personally and our wonderful LBC audience. I'm guessing it's late morning where you are.
Yes.
How's the weather in San Francisco? Last time I looked, it wasn't so much Californian sunshine, but cloudy and windy, and the temperature a little colder than here.
It's actually a stunning day. It's blue skies everywhere. Yesterday we had the most beautiful sunset with like pink and blue. It was just stunning. It is colder than usual, but it's crispy cold, so it's okay. Yes, good.
Oh, well, I'm jealous about the sunshine because it's grey as anything in London. But anyway, unbelievably, as Susan said, it's already 3 years since you took up the artistic leadership of San Francisco Ballet. Are you fully settled now as a San Franciscan? And what is life like in the city? How are you finding California generally?
I think, it's strange because it feels very, very fast. I know it's been 3 years, but it's been relentless, which is normal at the beginning of a tenure. I remember the first 5 years really of English National Ballet feeling the same, very, very fast pace and a lot of work to be done. But yes, in terms of settled in San Francisco, I'm very much here as part of the amazing creative community that the city has. We have very, very beautiful arts organizations at our doorsteps. And yesterday I was at an event that brings, all of the institutions together. And so, yes, I feel like I have a life now here. I feel like I'm part of the creative and artistic community of the city, which is very important for the city, something they're very proud of and very supportive of. Of course, I miss London. I lived there for 27 years, and it completely shaped me in terms of my ethics, my views, especially about the performing arts and the importance of culture and the arts, and meant so many things that I think I'm I'm somewhat British, and that will never change. And to be fair, the British sense of humor I really miss, and I tried it now and then, and it's not something that translates so well to California. So I'm trying to keep it inside, because it's not always understood. The self-deprecation and this light. The British sense of humor, which I adore, but yeah, it's sometimes misunderstood. So I've learned to keep it for myself.
I was just thinking, born in Canada, somewhat Spanish, somewhat British, and now somewhat Californian. It's quite a cosmopolitan Tamara, I think.
Thank you.
I was surprised to learn, actually, that San Francisco is only the 4th most populous city in California, and it ranks just 17th across the whole of the US. But the ballet company must be ranked in the top few. I don't want to say how many, but certainly within a handful or less. What's the reason for San Francisco Ballet being so successful historically?
Well, I think one is that it had a historically great leadership from the very beginning, from the Christensen's and, of course, Helgi Tomasson's leadership. Very European leadership throughout almost, and so very continental, internationally minded, always very aware of not only what's happening locally and nationally, but internationally, always a host for new choreographers, always creative. So there's a lot of reasons why. And it's also, like I said before, in this city, the cultural institutions are very important. People are very proud to have cultural institutions that go beyond the city, that make a mark in the international scene, and they support the organizations to do just that. So it's a combination of kind of a very lucky history of leadership, from Danish to Icelandic, but very internationally minded artistic directors, a real interest for the new. I think one of the things that I've enjoyed the most in my position is how hungry both the audience and the artist are for new creations, new voices, new perspective, new ideas. They are risk takers by personality in San Francisco. There is a reason why this is Silicon Valley. There is a reason why AI is being created here. That's the mentality of the place. And that kind of risk taker and innovative approach, of course, then leaves a mark beyond our city. And then the support that the institutions receive.
Mm-hmm. Compared with your 10 years experience at English National Ballet, what are the big differences in running a large ballet company in the US?
I think the biggest difference, of course, is the funding. There is no public funding here. And while the public funding by the time I left of English National Ballet was below 40% of the budget, 40% of the budget is still a very, very, very nice safety net to have when you're making artistic decisions and artistic risk. You can, I think you feel more confident to take those risks when you know that regardless of the box office, if you invest in an unknown choreographer, in an unknown idea, in an unknown designer, if it goes well, very well. If it goes badly, you still can pay people at the end of the month. The level of risk here is different because you're relying very, very heavily on box office return and on donations, since there is no government funding at all. And so it is a different dynamic. But I have also found that the personal investment of those donors, many are second, third generation donors, entire families who have a history of caring and valuing an institution like San Francisco Ballet, is also actually very encouraging and a very rewarding thing to meet, when you meet individuals rather than governments, and you have conversations about what it means to them, this company, what it means to them in their family history, in their memories, in so many ways. That's also actually a very beautiful thing. So it has its pros and cons, but that will be the biggest difference.
Of course, about a year after you joined the company, maybe a little bit more than a year, the company received that record-breaking anonymous bequest of $60 million, I think it was. And if I'm right in remembering it, the lion's share of that was to go to an endowment dedicated to creating new ballets. I mean, it's an eye-watering amount that I guess British companies can only dream about. But it must make life somewhat easier going forward. I wondered if it placed any particular burdens on you as artistic director, or are you free to use the money as you wish? And what period does it cover going forward?
I mean, I'm not going to complain at all for donations. I don't care what kind of restrictions they come from. Please bring them our way. We'll take them. No questions asked. No, actually, burdens none. If in fact it was a very generous donation to support risk-taking and to support both the creation and the acquisition of works that had never been presented by the company. So if anything, it was a donation to give me more freedom. Which is the ideal donation that any artistic director would wish for. And right now we are making very big efforts in trying to have an endowment of the size that will allow us to have even more guarantees, to have a long-term plan. We have an amazing new executive director, Branislav Henselman, who has also come with incredible initiatives to bring new revenue. So we are in a very exciting time of our organization. And I guess what that donation did was give us that bridge between the old way of running the company and the new way of running the company, and allow us 2-3 years to slowly make those changes and take those calculated risks and start initiatives to bring new revenue sources and things like that will allow us to have a different model moving forward and a little bit more safety net.
Mm-hmm. You already touched on this a little bit, but English National Ballet was by definition a national company. That's the N in the acronym. San Francisco Ballet feels very much like a city company, maybe a state company, but certainly more localized in its reach. Is that a fair comment? Is it something you're trying to change?
I'm not sure that I would agree with you. If you look at the choreographers that have shaped the last 20 years, most of them had their first opportunities here. So while it is true that we do spend a very big amount of time in the city, we have to perform. We perform actually from December until the beginning of May. So about 6 months we're in the city performing nonstop. So that is a commitment, a local commitment to our audiences here. We have had an enormous impact globally, I think, historically, as an organization, supporting choreographers from the very beginning, like Christopher Wheldon, Liam Scarlett, David Dawson, like it goes on and on and on in terms of how this company and the kind of the creativity and the risk-taking of this company has enabled those choreographers to have a voice internationally. We also now have a really conscientious touring program. So we have now agreements with venues in LA, in Orange County. We are developing more like the sense of being the California company, especially since there really isn't very much more in California. And we also have international presence. We just announced that we will be coming to the Edinburgh Festival. There's more touring internationally announced. We've been twice to New York this year already. So in terms of a touring strategy and plans ahead, we are more committed and more strategic in developing a consistent presence in certain areas.
Thanks. That's very helpful. It's often the case where you've had a long-serving leader in any role, not just in ballet. And Helgi was obviously in post for something like 37 years. It's sometimes a bit difficult to change the direction of a company. I'm not even sure it needs necessarily changing. But has it been difficult to stamp your mark in 3 years after a 37-year tenure from your predecessor?
I don't think it has been particularly difficult from that point of view. But I am also always have been very respectful to the legacy. If you look at my 10 years plus in ENB, I never replaced a choreography by Derek Dean, for example, or by Wayne Eaglin. I respect the people that paved the way before me. I don't understand the reasoning to enter into a company that has a perfectly good version of Swan Lake or Don Q and bring your own just because, I feel that my role is to add upon that legacy, not to replace it. And so I have a very good relationship with Helgi. I respect the enormous work that he did, bringing this company to the level that it's had. I respect his legacy. We work closely together when we bring his ballets back. And I think my role is to add upon that rather than, play chess and try to replace one king with another. That I think that's a waste of time and probably driven by ego rather than what is in the best interest of the organization. I genuinely don't have much ego. Like I'm not here for that. I'm here because I have a vision for the organization and I want the dancers to have the best possible career. And for that, I want to bring them the best choreographers alive or the best existing repertoire or the best new creations. And I want the audience to have unforgettable experience every time they come through the theater or through any venue that we present. So those are my motivations, and so I try, and I think I've succeeded generally both in the UK and here to have a constructive and respectful relationship with those that have built the place that I'm now host of. It doesn't belong to me. This will go on to somebody else. We're all just passing through these organizations, and the best you can do is add to it.
Well, Wayne's Nutcracker survived your entire reign at ENB. So I think we could describe your style really as evolutionary rather than revolutionary. That would be right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think I would be happy with that.
And actually, talking about Helgi, I see that you've got his Nutcracker starting in 2 days' time. And I guess that's already pretty much sold out as it is all over America.
It's not sold out. We've reached our record. We reached our record of box office in our entire history for Nutcracker. We reached $12 million just for Nutcracker box office. Wow. But we still have more tickets to go. So there's plenty of time to catch a plane and come to San Francisco and see our version of Nutcracker.
That's a great idea. I love the idea of your new production of Eugene Onegin, I have to say, choreographed by Yuri Posokov with music by Ilya Demutsky, which sounds like a recipe for a very Russian take on the most Russian of stories. Its world premiere is next month. Can you give us some insight into the origins of Yuri's new work and then your ideas about having a new Onegin?
So, Yuri has been the resident choreographer here for, I think, 20 years. He had made many works for the company, but never a full length. I went, as you know, because I think we discussed this, I went to see the premiere of Nureyev at the Bolshoi, and I was completely blown over, both by the music that was by Ilya as well as by the choreography. I commissioned a short piece for English National Ballet before I left. That was part of the digital programming during the pandemic. So I already worked with Yuri once in London, and I actually had already commissioned a new Nutcracker by Yuri for English National Ballet, but that is another story. But I believe that he's one of the most talented choreographers that use classical language alive today. And since he was our choreographer, I spoke to him from the beginning. Okay, so I want you to do a full length. What do you want to do? And he really, really wanted to do Onegin. It was something he had been waiting for many years for the opportunity and to feel ready. And I felt that, I had to support that, because when an artist is so convinced about what they want to do, you have to trust them. And Ilya's score is spectacular. I think it's going to be very different, of course, from John Cranko Onegin, completely different take. As you say, very Russian, almost surrealist. I find that Russian theater, but also Russian literature, is very similar to a certain extent to South American in that magic surrealism. Things happen in dreams, and they are symbolic. The narrative follows one line, but then you have all these other magical things that happen, these mirrors and these dreams and animals that mean something. And so it's very much magical surrealism on stage. And I think it's going to be beautiful. So I'm very excited. And it's always great to have work created for the artist of a company. It's the best. It's the best.
Well, we've known and loved, and no doubt will continue to love Kranko's Onegin for 60 years. But it's really very exciting to think of a new production, particularly coming from the Russian soul, as it were. By the way, last time I saw Yuri, he was dancing on a table in Tbilisi, but that also is another story. And also, by the way, Catherine Barkman, who I believe is scheduled to dance Tatiana. She's a dancer I first came across, believe it or not, at Ballet Manila in the Philippines.
Yes.
Many years ago. And I love that she's found her way to you in San Francisco Ballet, a lovely dancer. So let's look at the rest of the rep after January. You've got a very traditional Don Q, La Sylphide, and of course, wouldn't be a rep without a Balanchine program, but also some links really back to your rep at ENB with Bill Forsyth's Blake Works and a new piece by Azure Barton, who you introduced us all to when you were at ENB. And this mix of 19th and 20th century classics and new work seems to be really the staple rep in the West. But I wanted to know what the appetite was like from your audience in San Francisco. Is it similar to London, or is there a greater desire to see new work?
I think in London, there is the same, but it's more shape around the venues. So we perceived in London that people that go to Saldes Wells want new work. And people that go to the Coliseum want more the traditional classical works. And then there is the Royal Albert Hall, which is a completely different audience. I think eventually, by the time I left, we knew that about 30-40% of our audience followed us from venue to venue, which was very rare. That did not happen at the beginning of my tenure there. And I think that was part of building trust on the brand of English National Ballet, that there was a point where the people that wanted to see new works knew that what we bring was of such quality that they were willing to see also traditional artworks. And the people that wanted to see classical ballet had trust on us that the new works will be of the same excellence and quality. So that happened. Here we perform in the same venue, everything. And what we have seen is that, like I said before, if anything, there is, well, you know, the staples always are great for the box office, and I always want to have works for families and children and that are, you know, friendly for those that have never seen ballet before. There is a real interest for mixed bills, and there is a real interest for new creations in a way that didn't feel as safe perhaps in the UK, or as guaranteed in the UK sometimes.
Yeah. It's a comment rather than a question, I think, but I just wanted to say that how happy I was to see that you brought Liam's Frankenstein back into the rep last month. I know it was a co-production between the Royal and San Francisco, but I really hope that his choreographic legacy lives on. It didn't look as if it might for a while, but it's great. So I just wanted to thank you personally for that. And just moving on to talk about audiences. I know when you were at ENB, you had a great desire to diversify the audience, which was a reason, not the reason, but a reason behind commissioning ACRAM, having the She Said all women programs. I wondered if you're following the same principles of expanding audience interest in San Francisco, and if so, how are you trying to achieve that diversification, or is it still early days?
No, I think that's something that always motivates me. I feel that I do believe that arts and ballet and performing arts are transformational for people's lives. And I feel that it is my job to try and make people feel welcome to our art form, and that they don't feel that some perceptions about the art form might get in the way, or the venues, or whatever it may be, get in the way from them feeling accepted. I think that is a tragedy when someone feels that they're not accepted in our art form. I think that is something we need to constantly work towards, making everybody. And so, yeah, I commissioned, for example, a new program of Latino women or Hispanic women when I brought the Broken Wings Ballet, and together with a new Carmen. The new Onegin has a designer, Tim Yip, which had worked with ACRAM, of course. that is Chinese, and we have the biggest Chinatown outside of China in San Francisco. So we do have here an incredibly diverse population. And we also do some other things. We activate now the Opera House. So we engage with local artists. For the Frida Kahlo, we engage with the Mexican community, and they decorated the entire front of house. Artists came and replicated some areas of the Blue House of Frida Kahlo in Mexico. And so I know that we're bringing a flamenco artist for our Don Q pre-performance. We will have a flamenco concert every day at the Opera House before the show to bring in, Hispanic community again. We had actually an all-female mariachi band perform after the Frida Kahlo program, and it was insane. The Opera House full of people screaming ay 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 and Mexico and Cielito Lindo. So it's really moving when you feel that an entire new community feels that this art form is for them, and that this theater is for them too, and that they can express themselves however they want, and that they will be welcome in doing so. So that's, yes, always has been. I continue, to commission women, like you've mentioned already, mere mortals. And so, yes, it's always been one of my great motivations in my role.
Yeah, I mean, has all of that helped to bring a larger cohort of young people coming to the ballet in San Francisco? I mean, what is the age profile? Is it similar to London, or is it different?
I would say similar to London. The one program that transformed that was Mere Mortals. It was the creation by Asher Barton and Sam Shepard, Floating Points, a British DJ and composer. That completely changed the demographic. We had, I think it was in the first run, 10,000 new to our art form, 10,000 people that had never come to the Opera House or had never come to see a ballet. And most of them were young people. We had buses and people coming from the universities, Berkeley, and, so we had for the first time a real shift in the audiences, and some of those have continued to come. So that was so far the most transformational. I feel that, for example, Billy Forsyth program will bring a different audience, and because also, of course, the music is by James Blake, so we will have other events alongside that program to again engage with people that love pop music or tech music or electronic music. And so we utilize every part of the program to reach out to as biggest audience as possible, and I do think that it has an impact.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about your encouraging the Hispanic population in San Francisco to come along, and I was really pleased to see that the legendary Rita Moreno is going to be involved in your opening night gala next month. It's hard to imagine in the UK how huge these American opening night galas are, and their after parties and all. It's like Oscars night, I think, in ballet companies. I imagine that the San Francisco Ballet Gala is the ticket to have for January, yeah?
It's absolutely. I mean, we take over the City Hall, which is huge, with dining tables. There's a huge dinner with thousands of people that come. Then they walk across the street. We're across the City Hall into the Opera House. They see a performance. And then in the time that this 1 hour and something performance happens, the City Hall is transformed again into an evening venue where every area has a different DJ. There's dancing everywhere. Everybody's wearing, their best and black tie and gowns, and it is quite spectacular. It is nothing safe for another day. It's all in.
I guess the most important question is, have you got your dress sorted?
I have not. I always leave it for the last minute. It's terrible, but I just, right now it's Nutcracker. I cannot get my head into what I want to wear in January, but I probably should. So I'm going to make a note of it.
I'm sure it will be spectacular. I mean, I imagine that these galas are great both for a benefit of and also an inducement to the private benevolence. I mean, that's why they're so big in America, isn't it? Because it's all part and parcel of that need to make sure that benefactors are looked after and feel part of the community of the company, I guess, as well.
It is also an opportunity for benefactors to introduce their friends to the art form. So a thing that benefactors do that we really appreciate is that in a gala, they buy a table, and of course they themselves attend, but then they invite other people that don't often attend, people that work with them or family members or just friends. And that expands again the audience and the potential benefactor pool. And, we also have now a young circle patron, since we have younger audiences. And so giving them also a place to party and make connections and date, why not? If it's at the ballet, you're certainly going to find all kind of interests at the ballet. So yes, these parties, these events, these activations, these after events are all in a way to engage with the audience in a different way.
This is the London Ballet Circle, and the company has toured to London twice in recent times, most recently just before COVID in 2019. I know you're going to Edinburgh, you mentioned that earlier, but any predictions about when you might come back to London?
Just keep an eye, because we're about to announce, and obviously being in Edinburgh, you're close enough. So I think you can make a good guess,
That's what I was hoping for. Despite the fact you're always so busy in England, especially when you were dancing and directing simultaneously, which was for a large part of your period at ENB director, you always had time to be seen as a dynamic leader across the arts community. And actually, if I may say so, I think your leadership in that regard has been somewhat lost since you left. Nobody stepped into that space, frankly. Have you been able to take up a similar kind of arts-wide leadership in San Francisco or in the States more generally, or have you had to keep your head down?
Oh, I don't think I could keep my head down even if I was told to do so or if I wanted to. I don't think it's in my nature. And yes, luckily we have a new mayor who is very involved in the community. His daughter is in our school, so that helps matters in terms of having that direct connection. But also, yes, I was invited no long ago to go to New York and speak at the United Nations Cultural Table, also on different forums as well. And so I think it's something that I am passionate about. I have always lobbied on behalf of the performing arts. I continue to do so in whatever stage is available to me, whether that is the benefits of arts in education, whether that is the benefits of arts for the community, for social mobility, for creating different jobs that are safe from AI. Whether that is for the economy, whether that's local economy, international economy, for cultural cohesion, for understanding each other. I could go on and on and on about all the reasons why the arts need to have a place in society, need to be supported, whether that is through philanthropy or public funding. And we, those of us that are part of the arts, have a responsibility to ensure that the next generations of children have access to this important things. So I do it just out of conviction. There is really nothing for me that other than I believe in it. And so I will continue to do so, I think, to my last breath.
That really brings me into a nice segue to something I wanted to digress onto, actually, something I read this morning. Of course, the playwright Tom Stoppard died very recently. And I saw your post on Instagram this morning, drawing attention to a very eminent surgeon's letter in the Times, that's the London Times, not the New York Times, referencing Stoppard's play Arcadia and saying that watching the play led him, the surgeon, to a completely different understanding of the behavior of cells in breast cancer, which changed the way breast cancer was treated. So truly a case of art actually saving lives. And I thought it was so important for you to highlight that, and also so typical that it was you that highlighted that. So it just emphasizes the point, I think, that you're making about the importance of the arts.
But, I just read recently as well that Lady Deborah Bull is potentially going to be the next Speaker of the House of Lords. I encourage you, if you have any influence, to fight for that. I think she's always been an inspiration to me since I joined the Royal Ballet as a very young woman. She was an extraordinary thinker. She created the whole Limbury creative, program. I got my first Laurence Olivier Award with the Brown Strap Rojo project at the Limbury. She invested in all these new voices. I think that could be a very important role, I think, for the UK arts, if you had a lady speaker of the house that happened to be a principal ballerina in a previous kind of lifetime. So I do think that there are other people out there doing the work, and perhaps they don't get as much recognition as I get, but they do exist, and they need the support of the community.
In my other life, which I think you know about, and some people on this call, I have lots of friends in the House of Lords, and I've already emailed some of them to suggest that they support Deborah's candidature, because it would be wonderful. I totally agree with you. Let me also digress a little bit more. I don't think many people will know this, but you took a PhD and you wrote a thesis which in Spanish, but the English title I think was something like The Psychological Profile of the Elite Dancer. I've got a copy, your dad sent me it, and I'm using it to try and practice my Spanish. But I can't imagine any other eminent principal ballet dancer, whether ballerina or danseur, writing a thesis about the psychology of being a dancer. What did you learn doing that?
I learned a lot about the history of my art form. So while I was doing all the tests were based on a Canadian sport test that was used by the Canadian Olympic team to create a profile of what kind of athletes they were going to train, because they felt that some art athletes had amazing potential, in training were exceptional, but in performance they couldn't deliver. And I, as an artist, always wondered, like, I wasn't the most talented by a mile, and I could see that some of my colleagues in the studio were so much better than me. But there was something that changed on the stage, that I was able to surpass my own physical limitations and transform, and that other colleagues lost out in their potential. And I wanted to understand that. Why was that happening, and how could we support those artists? And in the meantime, my director of the thesis said to me, but first of all, you have to define what a professional dancer is. When did the profession begin, and how? And so that put me down a 6-year rabbit hole of research of how our art form developed, how it became professionalized in different countries at different times, how it survived revolutions, how it changed, how it became. I mean, it is exceptional to think that it went from being the flagship of the Tsar of Russia to being the flagship of the Soviet Union and the cultural, the Cuban Revolution. But that has been the case. So what happens? What are the leaders that make sure that those cultural institutions survive, and how do they do it? And for me, a very inspirational figure was Ninette de Valois. She started a small company basically inspired by the Ballet Russe de Diaghilev, and created an institution that is unquestionable. I think if you go to London and you ask a black cab, how long has the Royal Ballet been around? They'll probably say to you hundreds of years, because it feels like it has been as long as the royal, the monarchy has been around. That's an amazing, epic achievement by one singular individual. And so that was kind of the mixture of those two interests, the interest in what is it that a dancer needs to reach their full potential, and then how did our art form became part of the culture of certain countries, an unquestionable part, and who were the individuals that did that, and how did they achieve that? And there were those two interests that fueled that research. But like I said, it did take 6 years, so I didn't do it like overnight. It was a long process.
I'm absolutely fascinated about sports psychology, and I think sports psychology and the psychology of being an expert dancer, or indeed an expert anything, is probably the same. And I, just as an aside, I heard a speech only a couple of weeks ago by an Olympic gold medalist in the hurdles. And he said in his speech that the Olympic gold medal was not won actually over the hurdles. It was won in the little room that the hurdlers all shared before they went to get onto their marks. And just by looking around the room, he could tell he was going to win, just because people wouldn't meet his eye, or, you know, they turned away from him. So psychology is, I think, more important actually than you know, the ability to run fast or to dance well. What I'm pretty sure about is that you have the vision and the passion that if you were in that little room with all the other competitors, you'd probably win too. Okay, I have to talk to you about your own choreography, because I know that since we last spoke at the London Ballet Circle, your version of Raymonda was made, and also you made a Cinderella for Royal Swedish Ballet. And I know your Raymonda, set in the Crimean War, if people haven't seen it, has already been seen in San Francisco. Was it exactly as you created it for ENB, or did you make changes?
I did make a few changes. I think it's inevitable for a choreographer when you revisit something to question. And of course, the first time you do it, you want to say everything, you know, and like you probably can work out, I'm pretty relentless at research. And again, I took 5 years to do Raymonda of research. And so when I delivered it, I wanted to say everything. And then when I saw it again, I realized there were certain things that didn't need to be said. So, you know, while I found them fascinating, not everybody else agreed. So I did make some edits. It's a slightly shorter version. I think it's better for it. And I learned that from Akram, to be honest. He was fearless in Giselle, in cutting sections that, you know, we as artists loved, and we had worked for months on. And once he saw it on the stage, he was like, no, that doesn't work out. And so I did a little bit of that when we revisited here.
I imagine the concept of the Crimean War needs a bit more explanation in San Francisco than it did in London.
Yes, that was certainly something that, you know, that was so part of the British culture, so understood without having to be explained, that here, and even the figure of you know, Florence Nightingale is intrinsically British, you know. But still, a war is a war, and love is love. And so while you move over from those cultural context, the core of the story is the same.
Yeah, and Raymonda is such a beautiful ballet with beautiful music. I think it probably needed a makeover, so it was great that you did it, and hopefully it will stay in the rep and it'll be seen even more. That would be great. And Cinderella, you made that for Royal Swedish Ballet in 22, I think, just before you moved over. Is that likely to move outside of Stockholm? Any chance of that being seen in San Francisco?
You know, we have Christopher Wilden's Cinderella in San Francisco, and for me, that is a masterpiece. So again, I wouldn't replace his Cinderella with my Cinderella. And also, I've been lucky enough that they've done it every year since it was choreographed. And even now that they're out of their opera house and they're moving into a new building, they've already contacted me because they want to adapt it to the new building. So it's become their Nutcracker, their staple for Christmas. And I feel very proud about that. I feel very, very proud that now that is a tradition, a Swedish tradition, to go and see Askungen, as they call it, every year for Christmas. So I'm very happy. I'm very satisfied that it should remain there with them.
I saw it and I loved it. So I'm so pleased to see that it's got a continuing life. I mean, two ballets that have both been successful. Any plans to create more work in your spare time?
That's the key word, Graham, is spare. I don't think there is any spare time at the moment. And like I said before, I'm a slow creator, you know, perhaps not as slow as, you know, Gades, who used to take 10 years famously to do a work. But at the moment, I want to kind of use my place as a platform for others. I don't have like with Raymonda, there was a point where I wanted the ballet to be redone and nobody else will take the challenge. And so I did it. And with Cinderella, it was something that, someone I respected very much, Nicolas Lerich, asked me to do. And I said yes without thinking, as a challenge to myself. But that's not the case right now. There is no need for me to step in. We have a long list of new creations in the horizon with amazing, amazing voices. So I'm perfectly happy to do what I'm doing for now. And if either that calling or the situation is the right one, perhaps I would think about it. But it's not something that I'm trying to force in any way.
We'll keep an eye out for it. Carlos is making a new La Bayadere as a Venetian piece, a makeover to make it more kind of politically acceptable, I guess. And I'm sure there's a need for a new La Bayadere on the West Coast for similar reasons. But anyway, now that you've had time to reflect on your 10 years at the helm of English National Ballet, what would you say is the most important aspect of your legacy there?
I mean, it's difficult, like I said, I'm quite British at this point, so it's difficult to sing my own praises. But I would say there's a couple of things, perhaps all three things. One, the female choreographer voices that had been so absent from the stage for over 20 years when I took over. And that somehow those two programs, she said, and she persisted, kind of forced everybody else to do something about it. And it completely changed the scene for choreographers now. I mean, Annabelle Lopez Ochoa just doesn't stop working. And I'm so proud and so happy for her. But she's just one of many very busy choreographers, women choreographers around the world. So I'm proud of that legacy. I'm proud of the legacy of the transformation of the classics, that Akram's Giselle kind of unlocked. I remember very important figures of the British ballet scene before the opening night saying that what I was doing was destroying the legacy. And I now feel that everybody understands that both things can live together. You can both understand and protect the tradition and the legacy and bring new voices to reinterpret that legacy. And I think the more you do that, the more alive is the tradition. And so that kind of taking away that narrative that in order to protect our art form, we needed to freeze it, and bring in the narrative that actually in order to protect our art form, we need new voices to challenge it. And then, of course, the building itself, the new building for English National Ballet that gave them a physical and a financial infrastructure to guarantee their future for 100 years. Few arts leaders get the opportunity to leave a legacy that I was very lucky that I was in the right place at the right time and that I had great people around me like Justin Bickel, who supported that and literally dragged that project from the very beginning to completion. Again, without nothing other than the best interest of the company at heart. So, and of course, my team, Patrick and Grace, who work endlessly to make that happen. So I think those three things I can give myself a pat on the back for.
We can all give you a pat on the back. Justin was an amazing man, and we all miss him terribly, a tragic loss. And also, I remember very well some of the traditionalists complaining about messing around with Giselle, but to be honest with you, that was all washed away almost immediately on the morning after the premiere, when everybody saw what an astonishing piece of work it is. You've taken Dust to San Francisco, haven't you? How did that go down?
It went well. Our theater is very, very big. And so it didn't have kind of the intimacy that Saleswell's Theater or the Barbican, where it was first premiere, had. It went really, really well in New York at City Center because of that reason, how much more intimate that venue was. But it is coming again, so we will present it again for sure.
Have you been able to get back to London or Madrid much in the past 3 years? or are you really
I've been a
stuck
couple
down
of times to London, mainly to watch theater, if I'm honest. Like when I go there, I have like 5 plays or 5 events in 5 nights. I miss that. I miss that theater scene in London that is, you know, unique in the world, and to catch up with friends and see people. So whenever I go back to Europe, I make sure I make a stop in London for a few days.
Oh, wonderful. I was privileged to be in Paris for your final performance, just talking about Akram's Giselle, just over 3 years ago in October. And I was wondering if there's any chance ever that we might see you back on stage other than to make an artistic director's announcement.
I don't know. I've been asked many times in the recent year, especially. Lots of people are asking me to dance again, specific things. And again, I don't know that I have the time to do it at the standard that I would require for myself. You know, I think I always had the utmost respect for my art form and for the audience. And unless I was very sure that what I could do was of the standard I feel is required, I don't know that I will want to do it. But never say never. If it's the right piece and the right moment, perhaps.
Wow. Well, that leaves us with a whetted appetite, maybe. And I suppose the last question, I haven't talked to you at all about your time as a dancer, because we covered that all so well 3 years ago. But I guess now that you have ostensibly retired from dancing, I mean, it's impossible, no matter how long a dancer's career is, for them to cover really all the things that they might have wished to dance. I mean, what did you leave behind? What would you have loved to have done that you haven't been able, because of circumstances, to do?
Not very much. I have to say I was very lucky. I work with Matsek, I work with Billy, I work with so many people that I admire. I probably would have loved to do Pina Bausch myself at some point. But in general, I did have a very complete career. I mean, I touch every possible style, really. And I feel very lucky. I think it's not so much what pieces I would have liked to do. I think I would have liked to be braver in my own performances sometimes, especially while I was, at the Royal Ballet. I wish I had cared less about people's perceptions or, my leadership perceptions, or care less about being fired even, and just stuck to my convictions and redefine the art form from the stage as a dancer, as I later felt I could do more as a director. But I think dancers can do that too. If you allow them, you give them permission to take risk and to make mistakes and to change the way a particular piece is done, to redefine it by their own interpretation. I think that's so important for the art form, and that was not available to me during those years, and I wish I had done it regardless.
Yeah, I mean, without going into any detail, I think the same certainty that we can see here this evening in this interview was there when you were a dancer. I mean, I know for a fact that you fought for roles and you fought to keep roles, and you were, as far as I know, almost invariably successful in both. We're going to come to questions in a minute, but to close, I've got a little story which leads to my final question. And I was told yesterday, actually, of a former British ambassador to the US, long before Lord Mandelson, I have to say, being asked by the Washington Post what he wanted for Christmas. And he replied, after a moment's thought, that he would appreciate some fine cigars, a bottle of malt whiskey, and a smoking jacket. And the next morning, the newspaper ran a story saying that it had asked various ambassadors what they wanted for Christmas. The French ambassador said that he wanted world peace. The Italian ambassador said that he hoped for an end to famine in Africa. And the British ambassador had asked for whiskey and cigars. So with that salutary story in mind, let me end by asking you, Tamara, what would be your greatest wish for Christmas?
A holiday. a break, a rest, some true time off. I think that is something that is very rare for anyone in leadership, in any kind of leadership. But yeah, probably that the internet go down for 24 hours. That will be great. No emails, no,
But then you just have to catch up with them when it comes back on.
That's fine. That's fine. But, being unreachable, like, my parents' generation could be sometimes. I think that is a luxury that they didn't even know they had.
Yeah. So I guess with all these Nutcrackers, you're not going to get much of a rest in December, but hopefully you get a few days before the opening gala in January.
Yes.
Time to choose a dress anyway. That's the important thing.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I am now going to look at the questions. Oh, okay. The first one is from Pat. It sort of covers a bit that we already talked about, but it's a specific point. Would you like to bring Akram's Giselle to San Francisco?
I would love to, but it's up to Akram. It's his work, and I know that he wants to redefine it. I think probably. So I don't know that will happen, but it's certainly something I have tried to do already. But at the end of the day, is his intellectual property. So
yeah. It's coming back, of course, with ENB in January, but I'm sure a lot of people on the call will be seeing it. I've got a question from Michael. He says, some companies post-COVID have continued with streaming programs, but I don't think San Francisco has. Is there any possibility the company might do so in the future? I'd love to see Raymonda and ENB didn't offer a DVD. There you go.
It's quite difficult. I mean, I would love to, but it is quite difficult in the United States due to union regulations to come together and be able to offer that kind of thing. It's very, very costly. But, we have 7 different unions, each of them with their own requirement for filming. And so it's very rare, very costly. But I understand that that's one of the tools that we have in order to have an international presence. But it's not one that we can use right now. But I would love to be able to move forward with that.
As an aside, since COVID, I've become quite a fan of Pacific Northwest Ballet, although I've never been to Seattle, because they have continued with their streaming program. It is full of rules and regulations, which are all governed by the union, but they've managed to, most of their rep, they do show over a weekend. I'm not quite sure how Peter and his team do that.
I'll ask him because, I love him and we are in touch. So I'll certainly, now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to reach out to him for sure.
Okay, I'm vetting these questions. So the next one is from Fiona. She says, I watched the recent Guggenheim interview in New York with you and the artistic director of your co-commissioning company, Joffrey, Ashley Wheater, about the new Onegin Ballet. The discussion about co-commissioning and also about previews was enlightening to me. Could you explain and elaborate to this audience?
Yes, I mean, we explained there that there is a different funding models. Co-commissioning means that one work is shared by 2 different companies or even 3. And so the cost of the production, let's say that Onegin will cost around $2 million, is shared in terms of the sets, the costume, the physical kind of property and the intellectual property, the choreography and the music. All of that is shared between these 2 organizations. Then each of us has to cover the creation process individually. So the weeks that each of us dedicated to this creation, and each of us dedicated 6 weeks initially. And so that also gives more time to the choreographer to do a new piece, to be able to give 12 weeks. I mean, we only have 22 weeks of rehearsals a year, and we have to rehearse 6 programs plus Nutcracker in 22 weeks. So we couldn't dedicate 12 weeks to just one creation. So having a partner that can share that process is important. There's also co-commissioning that usually is with venues. So for example, a world premiere can be co-commissioned by San Francisco Ballet and Edinburgh Festival. So that could be a model that we're looking at for the future, or, Teatro Real in Madrid, if it's something to do with a Spanish theme or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other part of the question? Sorry.
The discussion about co-commissioning, also about previews, was enlightening to me. Could you explain and elaborate to the audience?
And a thing that I introduced at the English National Ballet was the preview, because I always feel that we are not competing against each other, ballet companies. What we're competing against really is Broadway and the West End, and of course Netflix and all the other things. And those performing arts organizations, or private often, they have months and months of previews where they fine-tune a production with feedback from the audience. Ballet companies never do that. I mean, I've seen colleagues that commission a world premiere and give themselves a day and a half in the theater before they open. That's suicidal. I don't understand how you can do that. And so we did that with English National Ballet for Acclaimed Giselle. We did a week of previews with actual teenagers in Manchester, the most honest people I think you can find in the world. They were very honest about the things they didn't like about Giselle, and it did change the production considerably. And we are going to do that for the first time. We're going to have an invited audience for Onegin. We're going to have one preview a week before the opening night. So that, again, if there are things, especially I think for a choreographer, like I said, even with Raymonda, when you spend so much time with a project, there's a moment where you become blind. You cannot see it for what it is. You're truly invested in it. So having an outside perspective, a completely balanced and audience perspective to say, I don't understand this part, or this section is too long, or I lost interest in this character, or I don't see enough of it, could actually change a little bit, and help the production be more successful, which is what we all want. So I wish we had the opportunity to truly invest in productions by giving ourselves the opportunity to have feedback from the audience before the official opening night. I think there is a failure in our model that we cannot do it. But I'm trying slowly to introduce that here.
And it is, of course, something that is just normal in theatre, isn't it? To have, runs off Broadway, off West End. So with your preview of Onegin, it will be an entirely invited audience. People won't be able to buy a ticket for it?
No, it will be a curated audience of people that don't know anything about ballet.
Excellent question, Fiona. Judith asks, will you be bringing back Diego and Frida? Broken Wings, of course. We've got plans for that to come back?
We brought it already twice in 3 years, so I think I need to give it a little bit of a break. But yes, it's one of my favorite works. We've rented it actually to Houston and somebody else already, because we bought it from English National Ballet, so it now belongs to us, the production. And so it's traveling around the United States, which is great, and it will come back to us. But I think, we need to give it a little bit of a pause.
Yeah. Okay. I've just got 2 or 3 more questions. Glenn asks a really interesting question. He says, what is the ratio of successes to failures in your ambitions?
In my ambitions?
Yeah. I guess he means what has worked and what hasn't worked.
I think most things did work, but there's also been some things that didn't work. But I don't consider any of it to be a failure, because if something doesn't work, let's say in terms of the box office response or the critics, the process itself is important too. The process of having a creator here, the process of perhaps discovering an artist of the corps de ballet, doing something different that you didn't see until this creator put them forward. That is so important for the well-being of an arts organization and a ballet company especially. So the more opportunities for new people to come and look at the company with fresh eyes and pick out their talent that they feel they need for specific things, the better. And so I don't feel that they are failures, but of course I've commissioned things that haven't worked out. I'm not infallible for sure. I wish I was, but no.
So I think the moral from that is that there's something to be learned from everything. There's however superficial its success might be, you learn something happens that's to the greater benefit. Jason asks, how do you want audience members to feel when they leave a performance of San Francisco Ballet? I'm sure there's only one real answer to that, but
changed, irrevocably changed, and I think that is possible. Again, talking back about Justin, he was irrevocably changed one day when he first came to see a ballet performance or a rehearsal, actually, in his case. And that person then changed the art form forever. So you never know, every individual is a butterfly. You should ensure that they all get their wings out and create their own ripple effects. And so, yes, certainly not bored. Whatever it is, even hating it is better, but certainly feeling something.
Changed and wanting to come back. That's a key point, I guess. Sylvia asks, what do you look for when commissioning new work?
Relevance, probably, is one of the most important things. That the artist has either in their own practice a habit of doing works that become relevant. Excellence also, in their skills, in their choreographic skills, in their collaborative skills, whatever it might be, that is their key point. So I think those two things are pretty important to me.
Fantastic. And Fiona, I'm going to give Fiona the last question. She gets a second bite of the cherry. She says, on the San Francisco Ballet website, the pages about Marguerite and Armand, performed earlier this year, gave me an impression of special emotions for you. Can you explain something about that and how it felt to be staging Marguerite and Armand on the dancers at San Francisco Ballet?
I think it's, yes, it was a very moving experience because I was so close to the originals in a way, I was, like they say, 30 degrees of separation between Margot and Rudy and myself. And in terms of how few people had really performed it since it was created. And I had the amazing, amazing opportunity of working on that with Lynn Zimmer. And of course, with Gran and with Monica Mason, and with Anthony Dowell. And so I really felt like I was carrying a legacy and having the opportunity to pass that on after having, in my opinion, truly understood the piece and truly understood the intention of the creator and the intention of that first cast of dancers. Passing that on to a new generation is very moving because that is part of protecting the legacy, and that is part of ensuring that great works of art continue to live by being performed by next generations of artists. So it was very meaningful to bring it here. It was very meaningful to see how differently each cast interpret that and how they take the information and they make it their own. And I think that's what we should aspire to do as carriers of legacy.
Thank you very much, Tamara. Well, great questions from the audience. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to hand back to Susan in a moment, but I just wanted to say I think this is the 5th interview of one kind or another that we've done, and they're always a pleasure. I think you have a seductive passion about your art form and about arts and the politics of art, and long may that continue, Tamara. We wish you all every success in your career, and thank you so much for giving us the time. And with that, let me hand back to Susan.
Thank you, Graham. It's a pleasure always to talk to you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It sounds totally inadequate, that phrase, thank you. But I don't know what else to say. It's been absolutely fascinating listening, getting an insight into an artistic director's thinking, and the difference between the UK and the United States and so on. It's just been absolutely brilliant. What's happening in San Francisco is very exciting. The way you're building on Helgi's legacy and bringing new things to the audience and bringing them in. My only regret is San Francisco's so far away. Otherwise, I think most of us would be in the audience for many performances. However, we look forward to having you back in the UK, hopefully within the next few months. So that will be great. We will follow what's happening with great interest. Graham, thank you as always. A brilliant interview, wonderful questions, and the rapport between the two of you is so comfortable. It's just been a joy to be a part of this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me, and to the whole London Ballet Circle. It's always an honor. Thank you very much.
You are always welcome, and we're so proud that you're one of our vice presidents.
Thank you.
So before I say goodnight to all of you, just a quick reminder of what's coming up in the new year. January 13th on Zoom, Joy Womack will be our guest. Should be fascinating. February the 1st at the Royal Ballet School, we will celebrate LBC's 80th anniversary. We're going to have a special afternoon with the presentation and speakers and refreshments after. So you'll get the details about that very soon. And finally, March 9th on Zoom, once again, our annual general meeting. And we will have a guest speaker who I think you'll find very interesting. I'm just waiting for confirmation on that. So all I have left to say once again is a huge thank you to Tamara and to Graham. And thanks to all of you near and far who have joined us tonight. It's that special time of year when the lights are bright and the seasonal songs are playing in every shop and train station you could think of. And it's a wonderful time of year. And we at LBC, the trustees, we all wish you all a very happy holiday season, however you mark it. We wish you peace and joy, and we look forward to seeing you in 2026. So good night, everyone. Good afternoon to all of you on the West Coast of the US, and happy holidays. Good night.
Thank you, Susan. Bye-bye.
Great.